Good morning and welcome to the November 15th session. Before we start, we always open with a prayer, and today we're honored to have Pastor David Tennant from the Owensville United Methodist Church. Thanks for coming.
Let's be in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. And just that comment, thank you. As we approach Thanksgiving, at least we pray it's a time that we would slow down and give thanks to you for the blessings we have. In general, we have a short-term memory. We forget how blessed we are in this country and why we're blessed, that we would be able to take this time, and it would be okay if we start ahead of Thanksgiving to, again, this day, thank you for how you have blessed us, how you have gifted each and every one of us for the jobs that we have. Even if we're retired, we still have a job. Father, I thank you that, again, you have blessed us. Be with this group, this team here as they make your decisions, and pray that they would seek your counsel. And again, that each one of us throughout the course of this day would begin to take an assessment of how we've been blessed and this country has been blessed. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
I'm sorry?
I said have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corcoran?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda is the approval of the regular session minutes of November 8th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
Roll call, Gail?
Commissioner Corcoran,
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor,
Yes. And also, could we please make a notation that Commissioner Painter is not with us this morning?
yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Watson has a presentation. You know I say that with love, right?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you for doing that because I always struggle with trying to get the slideshow piece going. Good morning. Thank you for your time today. I have two things I'm here to talk to you about. The size of our board of directors. There's been some changes around the law on that. And also the crisis receiving center that we're doing some planning on. And I understand I have limited time, so I'll be very quick here. I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about what a crisis receiving center is and what the need is in our community. So a crisis receiving center is really part of an ideal behavioral health system, and it really is a best practice model for crisis care. So it's similar to a urgent care for physical health. It's a 24/7, no wrong door to behavioral health care for people that are in crisis, and that's for substance use as well as mental health. So it provides a secure and therapeutic community-based location. It can be used by first responders. They're really going to be the primary customer, law enforcement particularly, to be able to drop people off, to connect them to behavioral health care as an alternative to jail or the hospital. So at the center, we basically triage what's going on with the person, do an assessment, and then they can be there up to 23 hours for stabilization. So after that time, hopefully they're stabilized. If they're not, then a plan is made either to transfer them to the hospital if that level of care is needed, or to connect them or reconnect them back to community treatment. Any questions on that?
So Leanne, if you didn't have this, then they would go to jail for the night until they could get help the next day?
Well, possibly, yes. So there is a gap in our system right now, and really the only two secure places for people in crisis or jail or the hospital. And the hospital really is not always the ideal place for people that may not meet that level of care. So if you'll look at some of the statistics I provided, less than about 43% of people that are taken to the ED for a behavioral health concern actually are hospitalized. So there's a big gap. And part of what the concern is that there's a revolving door then, because because of HIPAA, there's not always connection when someone hits the ED there's not a connection back to the behavioral health system in the community. So these people could continue to be calling 911, having interactions with the police. They take them to the hospital. They're not admitted because, they may not meet criteria. And this can continue to escalate until they get arrested and end up in jail. So the whole time this is tying up law enforcement when this actually should be handled by the behavioral health system.
And that was going to be my next question to you is like law enforcement stays at the hospital till things are
Yes.
set. And what about with this type of a center? Would they?
No, they would
remain
not.
there?
So this would be, like I said, a no wrong door point of entry for people into the system. Law enforcement would drop. They would have actually their own entrance. Law enforcement would to be able to get them in there, and we would triage them within 5 minutes, and they're out the door again.
And that's where I guess that'll be answered with the staffing questions and et cetera.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'm sure everybody's aware, behavioral health issues are increasing, and they have been ever since COVID. And so we're seeing a huge increase in our use of our crisis hotline. And I actually had a typo on this presentation. We've had 774 calls in the first 2 months of fiscal year 2024. So we're seeing an increase. We're averaging about almost 400 calls a month now on the crisis line. And then also the sheriff's office alone responded to over 450 mental health calls last calendar year. And then the other larger departments that I talked to had an average about 140 calls a year. So this is, we're talking quite a few people that are in need. And in January, in 2022, for a 10-month period, over 1,800 people hit the emergency room for behavioral health issues. So there's definitely a need out there, and behavioral health does need specialized treatment. So this would be the place to send them. And again, this connects them to our system so that we can assist them and get them connected and make sure that their needs are met. One of the many things we learned with the opioid epidemic was that people need quick access to treatment. They can't be sitting and waiting a day to get in for an appointment. They need immediate care. And this would be something that could accomplish that and attach them to treatment. So I won't go through this. This is just for your information, basically what the ideal continuum of crisis care is. We do have some of these elements, but we do not have the receiving center, an urgent care, or a crisis stabilization unit. So some of those others that we do have, though. And this is just an infographic that the state uses, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, who is our state department. This just kind of explains how the crisis continuum works. Governor DeWine is very interested in increasing the crisis services throughout the state and has put some funding toward this. Unfortunately, it's not enough for us to do much with, but there is some there. But there is a big push for counties to have a full continuum of crisis care. So you can basically see that the crisis line, so that's someone to call, someone to respond, which is the mobile crisis team. We also have that. Somewhere for people to go, which would be the crisis facility or the crisis receiving center, and then the post-crisis wraparound. So you can see up at the top what the statistics are if you have all that in place. And it actually decreases the use of the jail, the ED, first responders having to respond, and people being admitted to the hospital. So all those points down at the bottom with the crisis line, mobile crisis, and the crisis receiving center, that's where there's pre-arrest diversion. So if we, the behavioral health system, can get them early, even at the crisis line point, we can hopefully divert them committing crimes or, needing to be arrested. So that's a very high level overview of what the receiving center is. Just real quick, we are actively planning for this. We have a planning committee. We did receive the Appalachian Community Planning Grant to get an architectural firm, a procured planner architectural firm, hard for me to say, that developed a plan for renovation of our building. And so that is in place, and we are lined up now to go into the Appalachian Community Development Grant. And we will be under Pike County's Community Action Committee. They'll be the lead applicant, and we'll be under their application. We're also just learned that we got awarded the Appalachian Community Technical Assistance funding, and that will help us with the planner to develop sustainability plan as well as an operational plan around the center. So this all kind of just happened really quickly. It's a little bit faster than I had anticipated, since I am relatively new to this position, but it's all just lining up right now. And so we're very excited about this. And I think it's really something that's needed in our county. And I think it'll really benefit our county.
There's a lot of need out there.
There is a lot of need.
Say, but there is.
Yes. And it just keeps increasing. So any questions on that?
Any projections on staffing numbers?
So we're in the process of looking at that. We have toured several facilities in the state. And that's part of what this consultant will help us with, the planning consultant, the operational planning consultant. But it would be a prescriber. It would be probably at least one nurse on staff at a time. We'll have peers involved because they're very good at connecting with people, as well as licensed mental health professionals. We're planning to kind of keep the cost down. We're planning to have our mobile crisis team stationed out of that building, so that'll reduce the cost, and also make it a little bit more centralized where mobile crisis is located out for responding out to the community. Any questions on that?
Let's talk a little bit about the money.
Let's talk about the money. So from what we've learned so far from talking with other counties that have these or are planning to implement these, it's about $1 million a year. So about half of that is very expensive. About half of that is billable to Medicaid. So we're looking at about $500,000 a year to operate this facility. So we are in the process of determining how we will fund that. We're hoping to get some grant funding. We have some funding at the board that we could use, but we're hoping to get some grant funding. I'm interested in trying to get One Ohio funding from the regional pot, because I think this really meets the needs and meets the definitions of what One Ohio is all about.
Isn't that what that money
It's exactly, yes.
to be designated to help?
Yes, exactly, it is. It's all about helping people with opioid disorders. Yeah. Helping with improving, one of the goals is helping to improve access to treatment, and this is exactly what this would do.
Well, thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions, Commissioner Corcoran?
No, I will have a lot later that I will connect with you on.
Please connect with me, because I need the county's support for this, and want you guys to be well informed as we're moving through the process. I didn't mention that Chief Deputy Chris Stratton is my co-chair for the planning committee. So we are actively working with law enforcement because they will be the primary customer for this center.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for coming in and giving us a heads up one-on-one earlier this week.
Yes,
Appreciate that.
you're welcome. And then do I have just a second to talk about the composition of the, okay, I'll be quick. All right, so there was recently a change to Ohio Revised Code 340, which is what governs the behavioral health, mental health and recovery boards. So basically, the size of the boards can now be changed. It can be either, so our board of directors, it can be either 9, 12, 14, 15, or 18 members. And we're currently at 14. And our board would like to request from the commissioners that we go down to 12 as our number. And the reason, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the reason for that is that it's very difficult for us to find board members, to keep board members. And it just would be very helpful if we could be at a little bit smaller number. Quorum's always an issue, but 12 I think would be ideal for us. And we're actually sitting at 12 right now. We just had a resignation, unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago from a county appointment. So we are sitting, and we had one open So we're sitting at 12 now, so we wouldn't have to make any changes. But obviously, this is your decision. Part of what the new law says is that a representative from the BCC would need to come and talk to our board of directors to hear our recommendations or our suggestions before you make a recommendation. So I'm hoping somebody could come at our December meeting.
What date is that, Leanne?
Yeah.
Oh, second Monday, is that like the 11th?
December 11th?
Look at me.
Yes, it is.
Look at that.
I'm proud of you.
Wow. So if that's not, I know it's with the holidays, if that's not good, then we can, just any time.
We'll work it out.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne, for
Leanne.
Happy
just
Thanksgiving.
Did you need anything from the board regarding the grant?
Yes,
Crisis Center?
yes, I do. I would like a letter of support for the Appalachian Community Development Grant.
When does that have to be in?
I have to have it in to
It's
Pike
soon.
County, yes, next week. So I
We have
can,
Session on the 20th on Monday,
Monday.
so.
Okay.
yeah, if I could get
as
it,
We can get a letter together, and if the board wants to go ahead and support it.
You
we
do
can
it real
that.
quick. I'm going there tomorrow.
yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Yes, I
thanks
really
for bringing
appreciate that.
up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you.
Okay, next we have a presentation by the Money Peeps. Are you a team today, Mary?
I'm going to have Emily run through the presentation. We worked on it together. She's gearing up to step into the shoes. And don't look at me like that.
You know, she can't go for 5 more years.
Okay, good.
5.
I've upped it.
Not that we don't trust you, Emily, but
But anyway, we have a kind of lengthy presentation, but we'll go through it as quickly as possible. You've heard most of the information individually, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Mary.
morning, Emily.
Hi. They are quite big shoes to fill.
Mhm.
Mary has a ton of knowledge and she has taught me very well and keep trying to learn as much as I can from her. So thanks. Okay, so I just want to say we have discussed this with you guys, with all the board members individually throughout the past several weeks. Please stop me if you have any questions, any discussion. This is a presentation, but we also require feedback and like to hear from you. So this draft appropriation is for the county general fund and all the other funds that are budgetary control of the Board of County Commissioners. This year we have 97 funds that have expenses, well, in next year's appropriation, which is down from 111, some grants, FEMA. The rental assistance have dropped off and we have added one new fund, which is the home funds. We'll discuss that further along. We are going to focus on the general fund operating, which is the expenses that are day-to-day to run the county, as well as touch base on the non-operating one-time cost or expenses that have a specific revenue tied to it. By law, unlike the tax budget, we have to balance the appropriations. We cannot spend more than we have is really what it comes down to. So let's get into the general fund draft appropriation. So our annual estimate of operating revenue, we go through each revenue line, talk to the other officials and have come up with a draft appropriation. Our property tax, as we all know, this is a triennial year. With the estimated property taxes, we have gone back to our trends. These years, it's typically about a 10% increase in our collections so we have estimated a 10% from our 23 estimated revenue. What is that? It's about where are we at? I'm sorry. From our 23 to 24, just around $1 million increase for 24. Sales tax is our largest revenue stream for the general fund, taking up pretty much about 50%. So we rely heavily on this. So in 23, we went in originally thinking we were going to hold flat to the 22. However, thinking that things were going to slow down from the pandemic. But as you can see, we've updated the estimate to be an increase to 38.5 million. So we are doing a 3% increase to 24, just assuming trends are still going up, but they are slowing down because we're actually at a 7% increase from our original 23 estimate of $37 million. License and permits. This is mainly from the building department. You had seen them go increase over the past couple of years due to the housing market being built, these large projects we've had. There were several schools that were being built. Well, that has started to slow down now that those projects are coming to a close. So we have a slight drop in the license and permits for next year. Intergovernmental, the largest part of this is casino revenues. We are anticipating a slight increase to just over $3 million. This also includes our indigent defense reimbursement. And this has been somewhat of a hot topic lately. We are showing an increase. However, in 22, I don't know if you remember, there was a slight period where we went to 100% reimbursement. They allowed for additional rate increases. And the history in 23, we started the year at 2 months at a 90%, dropped down for 4 months to 70%, 2 months to 66, and now we're at 85. So we are anticipating 85 for next year. If you watch the trends when it gets closer to the end of the state fiscal year, it's been dropping because the state has to balance their budget as well, what they reimburse to us. The local government funds, we're coming in about $1.6 million, and the homestead rollback is 1.36, which is tied to the property tax estimate. So the charges for services, the majority of this is property-related transactions. $3.2 million is for conveyance fees, and that is a drop from last year's estimate of around $4 million, and that has to do with the housing market as well. We will get into a little further part of this. The conveyance fees, a third of it actually is for non-operating. It's pinned for economic development. The recorder fee is tied into the property transactions too, just over $800,000. We also have indirect cost in here. This is the cost that the county has to run. How can I put this? We're recouping some of the costs that the general government spends of the county to run some of these other funds and departments that we are able to bill back to things such as the water resource department or engineer's office. This is including the auditor and treasurer as well. We have court fees in this, as well as 911 fees. Those are the comm center fees that we charge back to various users within the county. As you know, several weeks ago, the board approved the rates, which is a total $525,000. However, 110 of that is being covered by ARPA funds. So the townships, municipalities are getting a discount in 24. Investment income. Well, originally, our original estimate for 23, which this does come from the treasurer, and we take this from the advisor, the investment advisor. We only had 2.5 million, and we have increased that in 23 to now be nearly 4.5 million, which is what 24 will be as well. So that is a positive outcome of the pandemic, is these rates are higher and they're locking them in to try to keep this investment income up over the following years. Fines, those are court-related costs that are what they are. And then the other revenues, we have the title surplus in here. The title fund has had a surplus, and we anticipate them giving us $500,000 back, as well as this includes our insurance cost. The general fund will pay the full insurance bill, and then it bills back about $500,000 to the other departments for their property and vehicles. In 24, for our risk management, we are anticipating about a 15% increase. I think we'll actually be discussing that in a little more detail here in the next couple weeks. So this is a pie graph just to give a general visualization of the general fund revenues. As you can tell, sales tax is pushing 50%. It's what we heavily rely upon. And this is where you can see the non-operating coming in, economic development. Those are those conveyance fees that are earmarked for development. And then the other non-operating, a large part of that is the SWORT MOU we have for DJFS. There's some advanced repayments, stormwater charges, things like that in there. So now as we get into the expenses, something that we are including in this year's presentation that we haven't always is we are including a line item to show what the revised appropriation and then what the requests have been from the departments and then what is included in this the draft appropriation. As you can see, all but 2.6 requests are included in the draft. And we are showing an increase right now of 4.7% from the 2023 revised appropriation. And then when you look down at the non-operating, you see a large drop from 23 to 24. And in 22, if you recall, we transferred $10 million from general fund into the capital. 23, it's $11.5 million. And we have no further plans as of right now with any more contributions to the capital, which we will discuss a little more detail in a bit. Again, this is just a snapshot of the general fund allocation to the various program areas. We'll talk more about each of these trends in the upcoming slides. I just wanted you to get a sense of where our monies actually go. The biggest piece of the pie is the criminal justice and judicial, which is about 65.5% of our budget. And then if you add in public safety, which the bulk of that is DPSS, which is our 911 center, we become at just under 73% of our budget is going into the safety and criminal justice of the county. Okay, now we'll get some more details on these. This is the criminal justice program area. If you look from the request to the draft, the differences, there is going to be several reasons why. One thing I want to note is when we sent out the forms for this, we did not have our insurance amounts decided upon yet. So when the board decided for the county to pick up the extra expense and those increases, some people will actually show that their draft is higher than their request. And it's because we updated the insurance cost to each department. There's also still pending decisions to be made on request, as well as we backed out all salary action requests just to get everyone back down to square one. I would say everyone fell around 5% or a little less. There was Board of Elections did have a 7% request in here. So all the salary requests were also backed out. So common pleas court probation, they have an increase. It has to do with classification steps in their plans for their employees. They did have an increase in records checks, license costs. And in 23, they paid a trial bond officer out of a special fund to cover those reclassification plans that started this year. Juvenile detention and probation. A large part of their increase, they have a large increase, but there is contractual between the food and medical care and the electronic monitoring. Also, their reclaim grant, which we thought last year was up at 24, should be the last year that we are moving expenses from the reclaim into general fund just due to the changes in the laws of what can be paid out of there. They also gave an increase to their youth leaders in 2023 that is being funded in 2024. 2 employees that were paid from 4E and from special projects funds are also being moved to the general fund completely. So that was a large chunk. You get to municipal probation. They had some staffing changes that affected their fringes and salaries when people have left, which resulted in a reduction. However, they've requested a new probation officer position. So the two of those just offset each other. Okay, the sheriff's office. Now this is 76% of the criminal justice comes from the sheriff's office, which includes their whole departments and the adult detention center. The sheriff had a staff analysis completed this year, and they have requested 2, this is for the adult detention center, 2 corrections officers and 2 corporals, which have been funded, as well as an additional court services deputy and the expenses that go along with those, such as uniforms and equipment. Again, the jail had an increase in their medical contract and their food services contracts. Some of these miscellaneous costs that are under the sheriff, if you look at the sheriff and then below it, the miscellaneous criminal justice, those are all funds that are tied to the sheriff's. Okay, so in the miscellaneous, you'll see an increase in 23 appropriation, and that had to do with the cask increase. Mental health is no longer supporting cask funding, so the increase had to come into the general fund, as well as this year it went out for an RFP, and when the contract came in, it came in at a higher rate as well. So the total increase that is happening is around $500,000. I want to note that the sheriff, it does not include any increases for bargaining. Majority of it is not, because the deputies bargaining is up for contract at the end of this year. And then the COs and then the corporals and sergeants, they go up also in April. So they're all getting ready to bargain. We are going to, I apologize. Let's see. Is everything in there? Okay, the judicial services, we are getting into the courts, the clerks of the courts, the prosecutor, public defender. So the common police clerk's operation, there is a reduction just due to changing in staff. The municipal clerk, we haven't, and if you recall, in the beginning of 23, there were 5 positions funded for second shift, and that was approved in February. So these had to be annualized, and the total yearly salaries being included in the 24 appropriation, as well as a requested increase for postage and uniforms for the staff at the clerk's office. The common police court, they have an increase in operating expenses. And I want to note that all the courts have requested these same increases and are being recommended to be funded. Their assigned counsel, interpreters, everything has been increasing as we go, and you'll see witnesses. The courts have more postage. The courts, there's some large cases coming up in the county, and it's showing between the courts and even the clerk's offices. The common police court has also been funded. It's been recommended to fund a part-time court support administrator that they have requested. Domestic relations has an increase. They are restoring a summer intern that they used to have that they did not have in 23, and they would like to have that intern back. At juvenile, again, the same issues are happening there with the assigned counsel and interpreters. They also have their guardian ad litem appointments and delinquency and custody matters has been increasing. So the cost of those have all just gone up. Probate court, it includes the support for an additional staff attorney that was requested. Municipal court. So there's a computerization fund that's shared between the municipal court and the municipal clerk. There's been a cash flow issue with this fund. It was in 22 that this fund made a contribution towards the new case management system. And then in January, they pay a large bill that covers the maintenance of the systems. Well, the fund is somewhat depleted because of this cash flow issue. So the judges have requested this year that we move, there is one salary for an IT position that is paid out of the courts, the computerization fund, and that is being requested to be paid out of the general fund this year to allow this fund to build its balance back up and then move that staff back over the next couple of years into the courts computerizations fund. The prosecutor has an increase due to several combination items. One of it, there was 2 positions funded earlier this year in 23, and so we're annualizing those 2 positions in 24. They have an increase in their expert witnesses, transcripts, travels, everything as the other courts do. And their current payrolls are running in excess of the current appropriation. A note on this is the prosecutors' elected officials increase, and the impact rate for the investigators and FOJ expense is 1.75%. That is for all elected officials. That has been included in the draft appropriation across the board. The public defender, he is pretty much staying flat this year. And a note too is indigent defense expenses. are in the public defender. They're in juvenile, probate, municipal, and common pleas courts budgets as well. Okay, the general government. Overall, there's a $1.3 million increase being included in the draft. The auditor, there were some contractual increases between Tyler Connect and the CAFR, or I'm sorry, the ACFR now being contracted out. The BCC non-departmental, this is tax settlement fees, local dollars, soil and water, the Fair Board, OSU extension. A large part of the increase as well in the Board of County Commissioners are the utilities for the county. As of right now, we're anticipating about a $400,000 increase from 23. With the rates keep increasing, we really don't know where that will fall. So to be continued on that. When you look at the commissioner's line item, that is not just the commissioners as in the board's office. It includes, facilities, human resources, ISD, OMB, risk management, lots of non-departmental things are included in this number. Some large increases in here. ISD, there was a software that was paid for by CARES in 2020. It needs renewed, and that now is an ISD operating expense. Office 365 is set to be funded in 2024, which is, again, another large expense, which we should then start seeing expenses drop off from the regular office in 25. Facilities maintenance, there is a recommended facilities maintenance worker included in this draft. The Board of Elections, there is a cost increase. 2024 is a presidential election, so the draft appropriation right now is in line with the trends from presidential election years, with some increase due to price increases. The civil prosecutor is included in general government just because they provide support to the general offices. And they are also running in excess. Their current payrolls are running in excess of the current appropriation that's been included, plus Westlaw and some other small expenses for travel. And then as well as the recorder is holding flat, and the treasurer has some staffing changes that have some fringe increases. Public safety. The comm center bargaining units, the bargaining agreements are in place, so this does include all their increases. Building inspection has a reduction showing. They had some retirements, so there was a reduction in staff. However, the funding is close to flat because it's being recommended for a new permit specialist to increase their number so that they can get the turnaround quicker on all the permits that have been going through. EMA, this is only the general fund portion that you see here. The EMA fund itself is further on in discussions. This general fund includes a grant match and then as well as some additional funding they asked for. We have reduced the appropriation, the draft from their request due to, this is what prior to the pandemic, this was the normal funding amount. They have a growing fund cash balance, so we feel that they can withhold back down to the normal amount. And then the coroner has requested some additional expenses for travel and transport supplies that is included in the draft appropriation. Health and Human Services. Most of this section is mandated other than this TB clinic contract. So pretty quickly, the non-departmental, this is the mandated children with medical and handicaps, which is 0.1 millage. We still have not received the official valuation, have we? I don't think so. It's taking a little longer this year, but we were going off our estimate. There's the DJFS mandated share, which includes the 5% increase on second half, public assistance, children's services, family and children first funding, all of that is included there. TB clinic is the contract that is not mandated, but hold it flat again this year. Something I wanted to mention about the non-departmental, what is included in this too is the animal control. It's the funding that the general fund contributes to the dog and kennel fund. That is a special revenue fund. However, the revenues are just not sufficient to cover the operating expenses. I'll cover their additional requests here later. Currently, this draft appropriation has the exact same level of support as 23 has, which is $474,000. And then the veterans is also, they get a $500,000. They're getting very close to that, if not right up on it. They have a new director in place where it's trying to use more of the money to go out towards, it's not public assistance, what is it called? Is it public assistance? Yeah, to help public assistance too. So they're asking right under that $500,000. So the non-operating, they do have dedicated revenues or they are one-time expenses. We try to earmark those so they don't get included every year for operating. Economic development, this is funded by the conveyance fees and part of the economic development department. In 23, it was high because we had a $503,000 transfer to the track commitment that then was paid for in 23, and that's part of the 23 or the 32 corridor. Let's see, SWORT, they're adding 2 additional positions. Criminal justice is down. I'm sorry. Criminal justice is actually, it's an increase, and it's due to the CASC funding. Mental health source grant has now shifted to operating because we were getting the mental health grant and we are no longer getting that in 2024. There's also some other specialized grant, which is the QRT, Quick Response Team, that's part of the Sheriff's Office that was not included in 23, that is coming back in 24. And then there has been some inmate special medical needs here in the past couple years coming up, so those needs are also, there's some funding set aside for that as well. Judicial. So we have some space rented for juvenile court. So once that moves, probate is paying about $21,000 in rent that is going to go away, where they're housing the juvenile probation staff. The remainder of that money is advances that are needed for miscellaneous grants. So there might be, the sheriff's office has a grant coming in, but if it hasn't come yet, we advance the money. Once they get the grant, they reimburse the general fund. There's a large jump this year. Common Police Court has estimated right now, there's currently 2 capital cases scheduled to go through Common Pleas in 2024. They've estimated about $421,000 in expenses tied specifically to those 2 cases, which again is a wild card, unsure of what it truly will cost. So that money is being approved in the budget. It's being recommended to put in the budget, but as a non-operating, as this one-time expense. Legal and executive, this is where the capital funding has come into play, 10 million in 22, 11.5. So this drops drastically for the 24. Let's see. Health and Human Services, this has the stormwater pass through where we collect stormwater fees, and then that's passed over to the Soil and Water District through an MOU. And public safety, that's just budgeted there as well for possible advances. And then the vacation payments and retirements is just money there in case it's needed to cover some of the larger sick leaves and retirements. So that was a pretty quick overview of everything that was included in the draft appropriation. These are items that are still pending for the board's consideration. It's an additional $2.1 million in requests and salary actions. Everything that we've shown does not include any salary actions or these requests. The municipal clerk is asking for additional funding for 4 more employees to be open 7 days a week operation, to have a 7-day-a-week operation, as well as some additional overtime and additional salary increases on top of the board salary action. The auditor is requesting an additional clerk for procurement. The building department, the state is trying to get a program in place where they can offer a test for certification to the specialists. They get certified, and then they could review the plans first before it's passed on to the inspectors, which would help save the inspectors time as well. It's a 50-cent stipend to each permit specialist. The animal control program, let's circle back to that. Currently in the appropriations, $474,000 general fund support, which is what 23 is. They need an additional $100,000 in order to fund their current TO, which is 12 full-time employees and 5 part-time employees, plus their expenses as requested, which is just over $70,000 higher than their expense request for 23. And I would say the bulk of that is the vet bills. That it is what it is for the vets. On top of that $100,000, they are requesting an additional $225,000 of general fund support. They would like to staff 5 new positions. And the dog warden, Mr. Pappas, has said his main request of these will be 2 full-time kennel techs. And Greg, if you have any information on top of this, let me know. So the 2 full kennel techs, another deputy dog warden, a part-time receptionist, and then additional vet tech. If you have any questions on those, we can discuss it further. So juvenile court, on top of what has been recommended, they are asking for increased rates for 2 of their vacancies, so just a higher starting pay, as well as they want to increase in a seasonal employee's hours. The prosecutor, he is requesting an additional civil assistant as well as another investigator. The road patrol is requesting some additional overtime on top of the trends. Typically, if they need overtime, it's because they have vacancies, and then we move the budget from their, bargaining salaries over to the overtime if needed. The adult detention, they are requesting a 4th maintenance worker to keep up with the aging facilities on top of the 5 other officers. They also, there is I apologize, let's see. The school resource officer in 23, if you recall how the contracts changed with the school resource officers, they were being paid 100% by the schools. It has changed to work just like the township officers work, where it's 50%, the schools, 50% the county. In 23, we recommended that the contracts fund pick up the county's 50% just because it had a growing balance in it. And we feel that we'd like to recommend for that to happen again in 24 because it still has a nice balance that can cover that extra 50% expense to the county. So I do want to say these proposed expenses do not include a salary action. And just to let you know, each 1% of non-bargaining salary action employees is about $305,000. The bargaining portion is about 142, about 142,000 for each 1% for bargaining. That is not included in here, just to let you know for when these contracts do renew. There's a couple more. The Board of Elections is asking for additional expenses, about $79,000 on top of what the trends have been for election years. There is no grant funding included in here right now at all for the election. The sheriff is requesting some additional fuel and maintenance on their vehicles. However, the vehicles, they're finally getting in their 2023 vehicle order here shortly soon. And so we're hoping with the new vehicles that the maintenance will not be as high. And then again, yep, here it is, the 305,000 and then the 142 for the bargaining. So let's take a look at the general fund balance. Now this does not include any of those additional requests I just went over or any salary actions. So our cash balance at the end of 23 is estimated to be just under 42 million. And then there's about $4.2 million of that is restricted for economic developments. Their conveyance fee portion. So our real balance would be $37.66 million. You can see our estimated operating revenues and expenses, as well as the non-operating revenue and expense, brings the county's 2024 estimated fund balance to $38.75 million. I do want to say this does not include that $5.3 million budget stabilization fund. The goal is to keep the general fund at about 35% of the operating expenses, so that's $27 million. So once you take those things into consideration, the fund in 24 will have about $7.22 million of unrestricted money in it. You good on this? Okay, now we're getting into the other funds, non-general fund. Try to go through these pretty quickly. As long as the other funds have the resources to support the request, we generally recommend including all of their requests. So the local coronavirus relief and recovery update. What is left of these funds? We have ARPA funds, which just over $40 million was the county's revenue in 22, just under 7 million expenses. 23, we're just under 10. So that the 24 draft appropriation is $20 million, which is the balance of the ARPA funds. The next slide, I have a little more detail on that. And then there was the local assistance and tribal consistency fund. $100,000 came in. This money can be used for any governmental purposes. There's no time restrictions, but the current plan is to use these monies towards the facilities master plan. Okay, the American Rescue Plan Act. I want to say these funds have to be encumbered by the end of next year. So our plan is we have every single penny of this is going to be in the draft appropriation for 24, and it has to be spent then by 2026. So right now in the plan, road resurfacing, 4 million in 22, 2 million in 23, and then there is still another 2 million earmarked for 2024. We have water sewer projects, Newtonsville collection and the wastewater. There's Bethel State Route 132, 9 Mile, collection system improvements, Greenbrier. I think the commissioners just allocated some funds to Hopper Hill Replacement Middle East Fork Wastewater Treatment Plant. And then there's also the broadband that has been allocated. We spent $232,000 on a consultant last year in 20. And then we also have $10 million set aside for this. Once you get to the bottom of the math, there is still a balance of $4.16 million that has not been earmarked yet. I want to note that just under 3.5 million of this is revenue loss, which can be used for any governmental activity. And as we get further on, you'll see possibly a recommendation to move it into capital. And that being said, if these funds, as long as everything happens, these will be appropriated by the end of next year. Now we're going to look at these other funds by program area. If you have any questions on them, just stop me and feel free to ask. So the Health and Human Services, so JFS, I'm going to say overall, the Health and Human Services is down about only, $8,000? So the Job and Family Services, it is down overall. That's because they are now trying to budget closer to the trends. Before it was being budgeted, at a higher level, and now they're trying to get it to be a little more realistic. It has public assistance, children's services, child support, workforce development. Their vacancies are being budgeted with projected health plans. DD, it's up about $1.3 million in total. They're requesting 3 new positions, and they have included 4% salary actions and have several retirements happening next year. See, mental health is pretty much holding flat. It just changes due to variances in their grants. Let's see what's next. Senior services, there's a slight increase, and it's just the new construction will be levied. This does not have anything to do with the increased rates, the housing rates, the increased valuation on individual homes. Just the new construction will be added into this. The Juvenile Children's Services, it's support placement costs for delinquent unruly youth in the county. That is in the court's custody. So back to the animal control. So 20,000 of this is the balance, is the obligation, is for the auditor's licensing effort. Then the balance is the obligation of the commissioners. What you see funded here in the draft appropriation is with the $474,000. However, and it needs another $100,000 support to reach this $953,000 draft appropriation. You know, the revenues fluctuate some between the tag sales, penalties, this is redemption fees, court costs, things like that, but the majority of it falls on the county. I think it's over 50% now. Yeah. Again, this is being drafted at the TO as it is, plus the additional expenses. Juvenile 4E, there's a reduction due to staff no longer being paid from this fund. The domestic violence monies, they're required to be collected and to provide a shelter for victims of domestic violence. This was just approved several weeks, maybe a month ago. 1st of October. When you look down at the miscellaneous, there's a small amount for the septic rehab system that runs through economic development. The majority of this, the 23 and 24, this is where the One Ohio money is sitting. And the appropriation in 23, nothing has been decided by the board of where to spend it. So in 24, the fund balance right now is just over $690,000. We've received 5 deposits. And then one of the deposits is about $166,000 that we will receive every single year for a total of 18 years. And so the 23 has already come in for that. That's where the balance is sitting. These funds are restricted to use for evidence-based, forward-looking strategies, programming and services to expand availability of treatments for those affected by substance use disorders. A recommendation is now that the CASC program, the cost by losing the mental health funding and the increase in the program, that cost has gone up about $500,000 to the county. A recommendation would be to consider using 1 year of that payment to help offset some of those increased costs. The appropriation is there at $167,000, but that does not have any decision on where it's going to go. That is still the board's decision.
And Emily, just so anybody listening knows, part of that funding from the mental health isn't because they don't want to do it. They lost a grant, right?
They had lost the grant that originally was funding, and they're using their grants for other funding sources. Mary, any comment on that? Mary? Okay, environmental water resources. Water Resource Department operating includes transfers from the water and wastewater to combined services, which inflates this category. It's like it's being double tracked. So transfer goes in and then the expense goes out. So it looks like it's happening twice. So about 6.1 million of expenses in water and sewer revenue funds are transfers. So when you back all those out, looking at 23 to 24, we're going from about 31 million to $30 million, which is a decrease. And this all has to do with their capital, their 5-year plan, and their planned construction. Solid waste in 22 accounted for tornado debris and wastewater removal efforts. All changes are reflective of the solid waste plan. It's required by the Ohio EPA and then approved by the Adams Clermont Soil and Water District Board. What? Did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. Solid Waste District Board. The Soil and Water Conservation, and they've included H2 Ohio and other grant projects that have been wrapping up. The wetlands restoration, the design for the East Fork Reserve and Lower East Fork. And then stormwater varies based on planned projects. These are some general government, non-general fund. That doesn't confuse you. So we have the BCC liability funds. These are reserves for large sick and vacation payouts if the general fund doesn't have it available. The auditor funds remains basically flat. There is a $150,000 increase to the hotel lodging tax. The title administration fund, that includes that their $2 million appropriation does include the $500,000 surplus that they give to the county. There have been some staff changes that has resulted in a small decrease. The prosecutor DTAC, There's a repayment included in these numbers of $120,000. So the county gives them an advance because the DTAC comes in 2 payments and they don't always have, you have to wait for the tax settlement for them to receive their funds, and they pay some employees out of there. In 23, I think it was, they had a large collection, a delinquent collection. However, now that that's been collected, their collection will probably start going down. And this is reflecting in having to shift some staff into the general fund that can no longer be paid out of the DTAC, as well as the treasurer has a portion of the DTAC as well. The Recorder's Technology Fund, they have approved new rates from $4 per document to $4.75. That was approved in May by the board. And then there are, as I said, there's no grants included for the Board of Election as of right now. So the County Capital Improvement Fund. What you're looking at here for 21 and 22, those are historical actual what was spent. The 23 and 24 is the appropriation level. In 23, that these will roll into 24, there is some large projects that are under purchase order that haven't been completely paid. Juvenile expansion has $1 million in purchase orders, and Filliger campus right now has still $15 million in open purchase orders. So besides major building projects, the capital fund earmarks funds for the upkeep of the buildings, which is roof repairs, replacements, HVACs, painting, flooring. ISD has an equipment rotation that's included in this plan. The county vehicles is a large amount, safety security measures. So things that are right now included in 23's moving, and they'll roll into 24 as well as new 24 projects, the completion of the juvenile expansion, Filliger campus, the entire project, the vehicle and computer replacements, HVAC repairs, poll book replacements are included. There's some remodels, renovations, the DPSS towers, those expenses are on a schedule, and they're pretty hefty pricing. Requests that are still in consideration pending funding availability. Board of Elections has again requested a building. An turning building that was originally requested at $4 million is now a $10 million request. There are renovations to the jail, courthouse, more computer equipment that's not on the rotation, additional furniture and equipment. Yes, any of the large items, they're not included because the county is we are getting a facilities master plan done, and we want to get the results of those before any large projects are added to the plan. What is included in plan are the projects currently under contract. So to complete those. So our appropriation for 24 for the capital fund is $13.6 million. And this is just kind of a breakout of what it is. And to note, $3.5 million of that are 23 approved projects that just aren't under contract yet. So they were appropriated in 23, but have not happened yet. So we have to reappropriate that for 24. And then there is just over 10 million in additional capital projects happening. If you look up at the small table, the Filliger campus, it's about $4 million planned in 24, an additional on top of what is already under purchase order. The other large number in here is equipment replacements. And just to give you an idea of what that $5 million, it's a pretty big category. It's the sheriff and jail's body cameras, the ISD computers on rotation. There's matrix software in there for the sheriff, a countywide update to the PCSP swipe card system, of vehicle replacements, the poll books, countywide security system generators, GIS aerials, furniture replacements, and an inmate tracking system, as well as other small, when you say small in perspective, items. So we want to take a look at the cash flow for the capital, which as of today, it's got a nice balance of $28 million. However, just under $19 million of that is on purchase order. So that money is going to be spent. So our unencumbered cash at the beginning of next year is just under $10 million. The revenue estimate for 24 is 6.2 million, and what that includes is the property tax allocation that the general fund or that the capital fund gets, as well as reimbursement for the public defender's remodel that is now allowed to be part of the indigent defense reimbursement. So and then you take out the draft appropriation for 24, our unobligated cash for the end of the year is just $2.3 million. And just to remind you, this excludes any additional buildings, large, roof replacements or anything like that. So this is when we discuss the ARPA money, having that revenue replacement amount, that is an option that could be moved eventually into the general fund. We're going to have to start building up the general fund and move it into capital in the future, or the county might have to take on debt, which has not happened since Mary's been here for the capital. A long time. Mary said she is not having any debt when she retires. So, but this is definitely,
We get there, we'll make her stay.
Good idea.
Yeah, it'll work.
so our internal services funds, this is made up of 4 funds. Our health insurance fund, this covers the health cost for the employees. It's funded with charges to all the departments as well as to the employees, and then it's paid out of this fund. The draft appropriation has gone up some, and that's just the cost of the insurance has gone up. Fleet. So fleet is a fund we need to watch. At this point, the cash flow is continuously, the fleet bills the departments for fuel as well as for maintenance services. However, it continues to require support from the general fund. TTD, which is the telecommunications fund, it includes one-time cost for PBX upgrade done in 22, and then covers the telephone system in place for the county offices. So it pays the bills and collects the money from the departments. Then there's the Workman's Comp Fund. There were some rebates from the Ohio BWC back in 2020 and 21. And then in 23, they paid for some security and safety upgrades within the county. Transportation. The Engineers M&G Fund includes an estimated $7.8 million for road projects, including road resurfacing, as well as the $2 million that is included in the ARPA funds. They have 1.6 million bridge projects, and $1 million goes to the TID funding. CTC, they received some grant funds for COVID, as well as they continue to get some federal grant money, and they include about $690,000 in their capital to purchase vehicles, possibly park and ride, shelter repairs, maintenance, a routing system. They're being budgeted at full staff. The improvement districts on the last slide is just the RIDs, the residential improvement districts. And what goes out of there is the funding comes in, the school districts get made whole, and then as well as some Batavia Township expenses. So the criminal justice is other funding sources that are related to the criminal justice system. Juvenile, it includes 1.5 million in reclaim, as well as some 1D funding for teachers in the detention facility. Funds come through the Batavia schools, and then there's a $1,000 special project fund that supports some probation costs. The sheriff, this includes the contract fund. That was what we were referring to when we were talking about the contracts that are at the school resource officer in the townships. 2024 has right now 18 deputies included in this fund, with cost sharing between schools and the county, including 5 resource officers. And then there's 5 shared funding between townships and villages. And then Batavia Township has 8 officers. The first one is 50-50, but then all the rest are paid 100% by Batavia Township. There's a concealed and carry included in this number. Narcotics unit funding is here. The forfeiture funds are included, but it's it's essentially been depleted, and it only has $2,000 budgeted for next year. There is also some other small DUI enforcement and education, continuing professional education funds. All of these have had reduced. The general fund is picking up more that these funds used to pick up just because the funds are being depleted and they're not being refilled at the same rate. Common pleas and municipal court probation, they are funded through various grants and they are used to enhance probation programs beyond the general fund budgets. The judicial services, we've got the law library. Its funding comes mostly from traffic courts. It has additional funds it charges to the county departments for publications that gives the lawyers access to the Westlaw at a discounted rate. Municipal clerk uses the computerization fund for costs related to the case management. This is also where there was a court's IT employee was paid from that in 24 is being recommended to come from general fund. The prosecutor's advocate grant, it's had reductions from the state, so it's required shifting staff costs into the general fund to support the victim advocate services. This grant, the funding's already been allocated and it's being held flat into 24. Juvenile court included a technology grant in the 2021 special project fund. They have some court-appointed special advocates fund, which is the CASA. Let's see here. Juvenile court, common pleas, clerk, and probate court, they all use computerization funds as well to support the case management system. Common pleas court special project pays a portion of staff for the court, while the administration of justice fund is for jury-related costs. And then domestic special project fund will include a part-time magistrate. So economic development, CDBG projects, they've been a priority and you can see the increase. It's reflected in the fund's activity since 2022. Economic development investments is the planning and development capital fund. In 22, $2 billion went to the TID for the I-Colts roundabout. And then in 23, that money was sent to the track with different contributions throughout the county for the 32 corridor. New in 23 is the home funds, and this is the allocation from HUD for affordable housing. And then there was also a commitment from the Clermont Metropolitan Housing Authority. And this HUD funding is going to continue based on it's a formula-based allocation, and it's going to be maintained through the Community and Economic Development Office. They've had several presentations to you regarding, and that allocation is being included in our appropriation. So the debt, the majority of this is special assessment bonds. There is one general obligation bond that will be paid off. I think it's in December of this year. The little $100 is a finance cost that could come up next year if needed. Then in public safety, EMA, it's a contract that ties to population, and there's several grants that fluctuate over the year. So it supports a director and a portion of 2 additional staffs with funding shared with LEPC and DPSS. And LEPC in 24, it includes a full-scale exercise this coming fall. The wireless funds, this is a wireless revenue that comes in from cell phone bills, and it's being held flat. There's been talk of those decreasing. However, we're just watching it closely. They had asked that part of their supervisors are currently funded out of this fund, and they'd asked to move to general fund, but we're recommending for it to stay in the wireless fund, and we'll just watch it to make sure, because the revenues are sustaining right now to support those. I think it's 15% of 4 supervisors. They also include the Marks and Cincinnati Bell access services and some certification expenses. Okay, so this is the program summary for all non-general fund. It's just a recap of the specific program area slides we just reviewed, showing the funds outside of the county's general fund. And it is just under $253 million appropriation for 2024. This is a reduction of $32.7 million from 23. I will say a chunk of that is the reduction of the ARPA funds as well. General government is a large portion of this, $17.4 million, and that is the appropriation for the county capital plan was so large in 2023, mostly due to the Filliger campus, and that appropriation is dropping for 24. So this is coming to the end. Here is our total draft appropriation with everything in here. Bless you. So this shows, and if you look to the right, it's the projected change in fund balance. So a positive, obviously the fund is planned to grow. Negative, it's decreasing. The general fund, the $1.5 million, that is what is left before salary actions, which a 1% is $305,000. For example, a 5% is $1.5 million, plus all the additional expenses I went over that were not included in this draft. Let's see. The non-operating as well is dropping, but the majority of that is due to those large capital cases in 24. I want to special revenue funds. It's dropping a lot, but that is the ARPA funds. Those are all the funds that are restricted for the specific purpose. They're either by regulations, levies, or legislation can only be spent on what they're specifically for. And if you have any specific questions on those, it's just the end of the year fund balance on everything.
Good job, Emily.
Excellent.
But if you would like to revisit any of those, slide 14 of the requests that are not included, if you have any feedback, it'd be a great time, or you can reach out to us individually if you'd like. And we are coming back in 2 weeks from today, I think, we're having a follow-up. So any recommendations of things you want us to pull out of the draft or add to the draft, we are going to roll that up and show you in 2 weeks what that looks like before we adopt it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary.
And we would definitely like any feedback, any direction,
Okay.
particularly on salary actions,
Yes.
what you're thinking. Departments mostly suggested 5% when we had meetings with them throughout this past month. So that's why she had the example of 1.5 million for that. But whatever direction the board has, so that we can maybe come back in 2 weeks with an updated that would include a salary action and some of these other items that are not yet included in there. So there are some things on that list that we don't feel are needed, particularly the school resource officers funding that we think that contract fund can handle. And then some of that 2.1 million is where departments that already had included a salary action. So that would be a duplicate. So it's not the full 2.1. But we've been able to address all but about 2.5% of our requests with this draft that we're presenting today.
Good job, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
both
much.
Very much.
Wow. You got all that, Commissioner?
Sure. All those numbers. I'm just glad I got paper and a pen. Thank you both very much.
Okay, moving on to item D, public participation. I don't see anyone in the audience. Item E, consent agenda. We've had this in time to review. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Make the motion?
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Corcoran,
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. Moving on, item F, non-consent. It is the recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners adopt resolution number 163-23, resolving to approve payment to vendors in the total amount of $1,472,479.12 as set forth in the BCC approval invoice report for checks dated November 15, 2023, BCC directed prepaid invoices report, and or the procurement card transaction report as presented by the county auditor on November 13th, 2023, and further authorizing the county auditor to issue warrants for same pursuant to section 319.16 of the Ohio Revised Code. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion?
I will second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. Gail, you got item 16.
Yes. This is actually a recommendation to acknowledge or approve the request to increase the compensation of precinct officials from $130 to $133.72, and to increase the ride-back pay from $10 to $25 effective January 1st, 2024. This is in compliance with Section 3501.28 of the Ohio Revised Code, and in concert with their letter of request dated 9/23/2023. This is from to increase the Board of Elections precinct officials' pay.
Thank you. We've had the reading of item 16. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion?
I will second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. They don't get paid enough, do they?
Item 17 is a recommendation to accept the easements granted and conveyed to the county for roadway purposes. This is for the project that, it's project number CC 9413, which is a Newtonsville Road Bridge Replacement Project located in Wayne Township, and authorized payment as compensation for the easements to Hollandia Farms Limited.
Thank you. We've had the reading of item number 17. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I will second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you.
Suki. Traffic jam.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Number 18 is the recommendation to execute an agreement between the County of Clermont, Ohio, and National Cinemedia, LLC for the purchase of the production and broadcast of commercials in movie theaters, on-screen in lobbies, and the internet relative to the promotion of the Clermont County Department of Job and Family Services Fraud Prevention and Control for a total amount not to exceed $29,000, effective 11/30/23 through 6/30/25, pursuant to the terms and conditions outlined therein, in conjunction with the 2023 to 2025 Clermont County DJFS fraud campaign, and contingent upon the release of the required purchase order.
Thank you. We have had the reading of item number 18. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I will second. Any discussion?
No.
Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Lyle.
Good morning. Yep. Item 19 is a recommendation to accept the contract between Clermont County and Smith Corp. Incorporated out of Cincinnati, Ohio. This is for project number 6401-60180 relative to the Weaver Road Water Petition Project located in Stone Lake Township, as complete as of July 27th, 2021, and to approve the application and certification for payment number 2, which is the final and represents the release of retainage in the principal amount of $932.03 plus all accrued interest earned.
Thank you. We have had the reading of item number 19. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I will second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. Number 20.
Item 20 is a recommendation to execute a contract for professional services between Clermont County and Strand Associates Incorporated out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is for project number 6402-60237 for design services for the Orchard Valley Lift Station Upgrade Project located in Miami Township. And for their proposal dated October 4th, 2023, for a total amount not to exceed $108,900, with said services to be completed within 406 consecutive calendar days upon issuance of a written notice to proceed from the Water Resources Department, exclusive of county review time and contingent upon the release of the purchase order.
Thank you. We have had the reading of item number 20. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I will second. Any discussion?
None.
Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. 21.
21 is a recommendation to accept the following grants of temporary and permanent sewer easements with rights of reentry for repair and replacement to be granted and conveyed to Clermont County by the grantor as outlined below for utility purposes for project number 6402-60214 for the Polo Field 2 Lift Station Improvements Project located in Union Township, and to execute the replat of easements. And the grantor is the Polo Fields Association. And this is the only easement that we'll need for this project.
We have had the reading of item number 21. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
I will second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes, thank you, Lyle.
Great, thank you.
And are we going to have Hannah on Zoom? There she is.
Oh, thanks for accommodating me. Sorry I can't be there in person. Item number 22 is a recommendation to authorize Bonnie Batchelor, President of the Board of County Commissioners, or in her absence, any member of the board, to execute a subrecipient letter of intent with the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. Total grant funding to the Ohio State University is $151,325 through the Ohio Department of Higher Education. The Office of Environmental Quality will receive grant funding in the amount of $36,020 with a local match of $137,433 and funds and in-kind services relative to the Williamsburg Wetland Monitoring Project located at the Village of Williamsburg, in compliance with the terms and conditions and in concert with the collaborative grant applications submitted by the Ohio State University for state assistance through the Ohio Department of Higher Education for the Harmful Algal Bloom Research Initiative.
We've had the reading of item number 22. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
I will second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, Hannah.
Aye.
Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Jim Maloney, the Administrator for the Clermont County Sheriff's Office. Item number 23, recommendation to execute a memorandum of understanding to the collective bargaining agreement by and between the County of Clermont, Ohio, and the Fraternal Order of Police Ohio Label Council, representing the corrections corporals and sergeants in the bargaining unit as attached hereto and made a part thereof.
Okay, thank you. We have had the reading of item number 23. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
I will second. Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran. Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes.
Item number 24, recommendation to execute a memorandum of understanding to the collective bargaining agreement by and between the County of Clermont, Ohio, and the Clermont County Deputy Sheriff's Association, which represents the sheriff's deputies and the corporals and the sergeants in separate bargaining units as attached hereto and made a part thereof.
Thank you. At the reading of item number 24, do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
I will second. Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes.
Item number 25, recommendation to execute a memorandum of understanding to the collective bargaining agreement by and between the County of Clermont, Ohio, and the Clermont County Corrections Association, representing the corrections officers in the bargaining unit as attached hereto and made part of thereof.
Thank you. We've had the reading of item number 25. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I will second. Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
Jim.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Item 26 is a request to increase the 2023 annual appropriations. The majority of these are for the debt funds to cover some finance costs and fees associated with collections of special assessments. So you have 1876 into the 2003 general obligation bond refunding, $51.42 for the Olive Branch Stone Lick widening project, so $57.44 for the general obligation special assessment from 2005, $798.80 for the 2011 various water and sewer assessments, and $32.82 for the 2006 general obligation special assessments. And then in addition, there's $7,000 into the general fund for the Board of Elections temporary workers because of the additional election we had.
Okay. We've had the reading of item number 26. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I will second. Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And Gail, we saved you to last.
This is a training and travel request, reimbursement of expenses for a recommendation to approve the request for training and travel according to the policies and procedures of the boards of county commissioner and in compliance with the annual appropriations for calendar year 2024 and any amendments. This is for Commissioner David Painter for 7 days in Washington, D.C. for an estimated not to exceed amount of $3,423.
Okay, we've had the reading of item number 27. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
I will second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Corcoran. Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes, thank you. This time, do we have any additions to the agenda, Mr. Idle?
No additions.
Okay, item H, county staff elected official discussion. Seeing none. Item I, member comment. Mr. Member, Mrs. Member?
The only member other than you. El Presidente? No, thank you.
Okay. Item J.
I think I can do that. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yes.
Commissioner Batchelor.
Yes. And I guess we'll be back Monday, right?
Yes, we will.
Due to the holiday, our session is next Monday. Thank you.